playoffs are upon us. We only have 2 weeks left, and shortly after that, it will be the NBL, the basically the March Madness thing for the NBL. This is Sports Hour. It is on to week 15 going into this next week. Start off with talk about what's going to happen with what it happens in the playoffs. Right now, for the NBL themselves, 6 of the teams have clinched. Not all the teams have figured it out. There's still two things that are in it. If the playoffs were to occur today, which it will occur in 2 weeks from now, it would be the Hawks and the Giants. But it's very close to figuring out what's going to happen because there's still any of these teams, the Hawks, the Giants, the Knights, the Bulldogs, the Kings, and the Indians could all technically make the playoffs. Any of those teams could, in theory, make the playoffs as a wild card slot. Now, as the divisional slot, for divisional, we have either the Panthers or the Knights, the Tigers, the Dragons, and then either the Browns or the Falcons. So week 15, that will probably be decided. If the Browns win or the Falcons lose, then the Browns will have that division at that point in time. These are the current seeds as of right now. As for the ABL is not even close inside, to be honest. The Werewolves have already clinched, the Warriors have clinched, and the Stars have clinched. However, for the Bobcats, Colts, UNC, Tex, and Dolphins could all still do it with wins. So if they both win, basically if they lose this week, they will not be able to make it into the playoffs unless they somehow get a really lucky point. And at this point, these teams all would make it in if the playoffs would occur today. Bobcats win only because they have beaten the Colts 1-1. Bobcats had a slight better game against the Colts, which is the reason why they are currently leading, even though the Colts do have a better record position. If the Bobcats do lose this week and the Colts win, they'll swap again. But it is really going to be very tough this one. So the ABL is going to be basically the NFC North or South because it's just fighting everything together. So it's going to be very tough for this week to decide what happens this one. As for the Lily Cats and Otters, both of them still are right there. And the likelihood is if they win this week, if the Lily Cats or the Otters win, or both of them win, then they will clinch a playoff slot. However, it's not going to be easy. All these teams, other teams have been eliminated at this moment in time. we get to look at this next week. It is going to be interesting to start off. We do have the Packers and the Warriors. Warriors are favored by 21. I feel like its favored is pretty accurate. I'm going to say the Warriors definitely win this game. I don't know why it's highlighted like that. Definitely the Warriors win that game. The Lincoln Cats and Jets is much tougher when it comes to the fact, though, because the Lincoln Cats and Jets are kind of fighting for that position to stay in the playoff hunt. So the thing is, the Lincoln Cats, if the Jets do win this tonight, tomorrow, the Lincoln Cats will still have a 1 point ahead of them because it will still be a half a game ahead of them. So they might both make the playoffs when it comes to that, but they might not. And so this game might be very important. If the Lincoln Cats do win that tomorrow, then the Lincoln Cats will clinch. If the Jets win tomorrow, then they could potentially still make it. Jets and Lincoln Cats both still can make the playoffs off the context here. Cats are favoring this game, and I'm going to favor them in this game because it's very close, and honestly, either one of these teams could win this game. The game of the week is the Dragons and Dogs. The Dogs were beaten last week by the Panthers, although it was a very, very good game. It was a very good game in the end. The thing is, let's assume the Dogs win tomorrow. And I realize that all of them say the same thing. They're all DO. Because they're all said DO for this one. The thing is, the Dragons are slightly worse when it comes to the Dogs, pointing out for it. So this is going to be a very tough game for either one of these teams. If you look at the Dogs are third and 22nd, so they don't have very good defense, but they've got a really good offense. As for the Dragons, they've got a pretty good on both sides. I will apologize. They all of these were Dragons. The Dog one was the Lilies. But looking at the context of how the Dogs have done really well going into this, even though the Dogs do have not been, they've got the second best. They got the third best offense, and that does make it difficult when it comes to this. I feel like the Dogs and Dragons are going to make it a lot more difficult. But if you look at the Dragons last week, look at the Dragons' 2 losses. I'm trying to see when the 2 times that the Dragons lost. So the Dragons lost to the Jets in their 1 loss. They're one of their 2 losses. And they lost to the Indians. So they lost against some teams that are not super powerful. The one game the Dogs lost against was against the Panthers. And that was a really close game. So in context, I feel like the Dogs are going to do better in this game. And I just don't see the Indians. Now, unfortunately, that does mean the Dogs and Panthers, who faced in the very last week, are going to be basically playing for the division. And that does make it a little more tough after that point. Stars 13-1, Beagles. I feel like the Stars is going to have to win this game. There's just no real chance I think it's going to be an easy way that the Stars win this game. I do like the Beagles in a lot of chances, but the Beagles at this point in time are not great, and the Stars are a lot better. The Stars aren't great as defense, but honestly, the Stars haven't needed their defense as much. They pretty much overcame most of their positions. I think it's going to be the Stars that win this game. We got the Kings and the Bears. The Bears are favored by 1 here. Both have the same percentage. Bears at this point in time are really bad at offense and not terrible, kind of in the middle for defense. As for the other one they have to play against, which is the Kings, they're basically the same. So it comes really down to whoever has the better offense here. And the Bears, they can't make the playoffs. They're eliminated. The Kings can still win, and I think by wanting to make sure that they play it, I think the Kings are going to have to win this game. I'm going to pick the Bears in this game because I think the Bears are going to do slightly better off the context here, but I do think if the Kings do win this game, it will be very necessary for them. Browns and Chargers. Browns are going to win this game. I just don't see a way that the Chargers can do it. Right now, the Chargers are not bad defense, but have not such a great offense. On the other side, they've got to face off against the Browns, who have really good stats in both positions, and they're also playing for first place. They're going to have to also beat the Falcons or have the Falcons lose for them to make it. But I'm going to pick the Browns to do for that one. We got the Indians and the Pirates. I'm going to close that. The Indians and Pirates game is going to be a tough game. It's probably not going to go very favorable, though, because the Indians have gone downhill like crazy. The Pirates are a lot better defense. They do a whole lot better for this context. I have to pick the Pirates winning this game. Pirates are favored by 22 in this game. Dolphins and the Bobcats. Now, this game is important because Dolphins, Bobcats. Bobcats win. They almost ensure that they are going to they're going to be the seed, the 4th seed. They're not going to be the number 1 seed, not going to be the number 2 seed. They're going to be the 4th seed. So basically, this game matters for them. Now, if the Dolphins do happen to win, they're going to actually be ahead of whoever they beat. We'll look at that a little bit here in the context sense. I had to pick the Bobcats winning this game, but I think it's going to be very close. Giants and Ravens. It's going to be the Giants that win this game. Yeah. The Giants and Ravens are a whole lot better, looking a whole lot worse. Ravens do have a higher amount of points that they have. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. They both have allowed about the same amount of points and scored the same amount of points. Ravens have allowed a lot more, which I think means that the Giants win this game. Bulldogs and Angels. Okay, this is tough. Bulldogs are still fighting to try to make it into the playoffs. And the team they're facing off against, the Angels, have been eliminated. So they're not going to be in the playoff position for that. So the Bulldogs really need to win this game. And they do have a pretty decent offense. Angels don't have, and both these teams have a pretty much the same offense and the same defense. So it really comes down to the fact who scores better. And I think the Bulldogs do better in that regard for it. We get the Falcons and the Saints. This game is so important for the Falcons. Falcons must win this game. Because if they don't, and the Browns win, the Browns will. If the Browns win and the Falcons lose, the Browns clinch the division. If the Falcons win and the Browns win, or it doesn't matter if the Browns win or lose, then they will be fighting for it. And I believe they play in the final week, if I remember correctly. They don't play in the final week. So the Browns face off against the Bulldogs and the who the Falcons play. Falcons play the Angels. So honestly, this is the very important thing they need to win for this to really work out. And because of the context of the Saints have been doing somewhat better recently, even though they've only got 4 wins. Looking at the last couple of games the Saints have had. The Saints lost the Bulldogs, but they lost in overtime. The Saints beat the Angels. The Saints beat the Packers. The Saints lost the Warriors, but that's not a problem. And then they lost by 1 against the Angels. So, to be honest, they could do it. But for the context here, I do think the Falcons are going to be a better team in this game. We got the Colts and the Tigers. Tigers have already clinched the division, and they have a pretty decent 14. They have a 12 and 10. On their other side, you've got the Colts, who really need to win in order to be able to take the division. And both these teams have a very good team, very good stats when it comes to the fact here. I'm going to say this is going to be a very high-scoring game. And I could see either one of these teams win. I'm going to pick the Tigers here because I do think the Tigers are going to be slightly better, but it's not going to be so much better that the Colts don't have a chance to win this game. Colts are favored by 3 in this game. We got the Foxes and the Hawks. The Foxes are not eliminated, so let me see. The Foxes are eliminated. And the Hawks are actually not eliminated. The Hawks are actually in playoff position right now. So the Hawks really need to win this game. When they're playing, they have the 21st and 24th. Oh, boy. But they got to face off against the Foxes. Foxes are in the same thing here. They're actually they're slightly worse when it comes to the fact of defense. They're slightly better in both situations here. So when it comes to theories, I do have to say, I hate to break this to the Hawks, but they're going to probably miss the playoffs. We got the R's and the Lynx. R's win, they are probably in. Probably in. They're in a position right now that's going to be tough because if they lose, let's say they lose both of the games, they'll be at 9-6, which means that any of these teams here could beat them. Not including the Bobcats because they are already better than them. So any of these teams could beat them, which means they could be pretty much knocked out of the playoffs. They are tied, so they do have a slight advantage, but that don't really only affects them for the higher seeds. I'm going to pick the Otters here because of the context. I think the Otters are going to be way better. Lynx are not very good. They got a good defense. Ours don't really have a better position off of this. But when it comes down to it, neither one of these teams is great and neither one of these is terrible. So I think honestly it could go either way here. Ours do score slightly better, and the Wings are not very good in offense. I think when it comes to an offensive position, I think the ours will win this. Defensively, I don't think it makes much of a difference. I feel like it's going to be the R's that win this game, to win the division here. We got the UNC and Tex. This is also a very important game for UNC. UNC and Tex are still the winner is. So there's two things happen. The three things that could happen. They won. One of them wins. That one could, in theory, still be in could be in the playoff hunt. Also, could technically be the division, the winner of the division, if both the Bobcats and Colts lose because both of them do not play each other this week. So that's important. But if they tie, they're both eliminated from the playoffs because they'll both be at one game and 1.5 of a game, which means they have to win the last week in order to even get a chance to make the playoffs. And I don't think they can make the playoffs with that standpoint because both of them are currently not even in the playoffs. So Colts are not in the playoffs right now, and neither are UNC. So looking at this here, they are both kind of trying to fight for it. If they win, they could. I think the last week could potentially make it. Them win it could make them into the playoffs. However, losing means they will be out of the playoffs. UNC, let's take, or United National Cats, plays the Colts last week. Oh my gosh, that is not going to be fun. As for the Tex, they played the Dolphins in the last week. So this actually means that they're both not going to make the playoffs unless they win this week. Because what will happen here is, if the Tex, let's say the Tex win. They move to 7-8. They have to win the last week to be able to make it into the playoffs. And I have to look back and see what happens in each one of those things for it. Because the way it's scheduled out right now, they have to beat the Dolphins. UNC has to beat the Colts. So at the point here, UNC's got to beat the Colts. Tex have got to beat the Dolphins in order for them to even make it into the division. And that doesn't matter if the Bobcats win this week. Bobcats win this week and they against the Dolphins. So here's the thing: if the Bobcats win this week against the Dolphins, it doesn't even matter what happens to the Dolphins. If the Dolphins do win, then the situation kind of changes, but it's not going to be easy for us. I'm going to say that it's not going to be a very great game for this one. I can see this one going either way. I'm going to pick, based on what the stats out here, and both of them are, UNC is actually better in context with, so I'm going to go with UNC win this game. We got the Huskies and the Lions. Both these teams are actually fighting for the playoffs. That's really what it is. Huskies and who's the other team? And the Lions. The Lions and Huskies are both out of the playoffs right now. Nope, wait, wrong one. Huskies are in the playoffs right now. Basically, this game decides whether Huskies again. If the Huskies win, the Lions can't really make it in. The Lions can technically make it in with some luck, but it will be difficult. So I think, honestly, the loser of that game between the Huskies and the Lions will be out of the playoffs. It's not insured, but I think it's likely going to be what's going to happen. Huskies are currently in the playoffs as the 7th seed. but it could go either way in this one. I'm gonna go with say that it's gonna be the Lions that win this game. I'm gonna go with the Lions win this one. I think the Lions are slightly better when it comes to the context here. They are third in defense, and even though they don't have the greatest offense, Huskies. Well, to be honest, they're both pretty good in defense. When it comes to the fact is, the Lions are slightly worse when it comes to offensive positions. I think if they're going to have to really work out well for this one, I'm going to go with the Lions winning this week. But it is going to be a very tough week, and honestly, that one could go either way. Lightning and Athens, this game doesn't matter. This game does not matter. Lightning and Athens are both eliminated. They're both really bad. They're both actually literally fighting in the last position. Lightning actually have 1.5 games ahead of them. I think it's the Lightning are going to have to lose this game. I think Lightning are going to lose this game. Go for the Athens win this game. But to be honest, that game doesn't matter what happens. We have got ourselves the Supermen and the Werewolves. Werewolves all the way. I don't even see ways the Supermen actually do anything in this game. The Supermen right now are 38th and tied for 26th when it comes to offense position. And that's not good. They got the worst offense, and they've got a really bad defense. Who are they tied with? 46. They are tied with the Indians. So neither one of those teams is good for it. Werewolves win that game. Panthers and Legends, I don't see a way the Panthers don't win this game. And if the Panthers do lose this game, by the way, to put it this way, if the Panthers somehow lose this game, Panthers will be, let's say the Dogs win. Dogs win against the Dragons. Panthers lose. The Dogs will still be, they'll be ahead again because they'll put them at 14-1, but the Panthers will be at 13-2. Then again, it will come down to last week. If the Panthers win that one, the Panthers will be the division leaders because they've won both games. But it comes down to a lot of things. That one, I don't think there's a chance. They're really bad. Panthers are really good. Cardinals and Knights, I'm going to give the Knights the win here. And the Knights really kind of do need to win this one because the Cardinals already eliminated from the playoffs by a long shot. Knights are still in the playoffs. They are currently out of the playoffs, but with a win against the Cardinals, they could push themselves back into the playoffs. And that will be a very interesting week for that one. All right, taking a look at the World Playoffs, or what we would call the March Madness bracket, basically, for this one. Who is in the brackets right now? Now, we're going to assume that the winner of each division is the person that's in charge of this kind of thing. So we'll say that the winner and loser, they don't matter. We'll say the winner, the loser, that the Panthers somehow win this one. These are our winners and losers. These are the two teams they kind of can switch. The seed ones that are remaining. So seed 1. Right now would be. It would be the Dogs. The Dogs would be the next best seed for the NBL. And again, these can switch. The Stars will be the next best seed for it. So this would be the teams that happen there. Now, for the highest rated offense, it would be the Panthers, but Panthers have already knocked off it, so it would be the next highest for, which is the Stars. Stars are already in the playoffs right now, in that thing right now, so we go to the third one. The third one is the dogs. Dogs can't already knock in. So we go to number 4. Who is number 4? Number 4 is the werewolves. The werewolves will be the next team. Offensively. Then we go to defense. Highest ranked defense right now is the werewolves. Werewolves are already in, so it would be the second number 2 seed, which would be the dragons. The dragons will make it in there. Then we get the next best record for each of the NBL and ABL, which would be by a record, so it doesn't really matter. The next best record here, that's unless it's not already in there, they're already locked in. So these 3 would be the next best records. They're not necessarily in that order, so this is kind of a genius for it. And the next best record for these would be these 3. Yeah, not too far. So these would be the next best 3. Then after that is the next best 4 records. So who's the next best record after? Let's see, the Falcons are here, are 10-4. Huskies would be it. Next best team is the 7s. So it would actually be all NBL. Because, well, it would be these 3. Because they're all the next best records. I put the wrong ones. It would be the next 3 because these all would make it in. And then the next best record after that one would be right now the Hawks. So these would be the team players that would make it into if the World Series would to occur. The World Series is just like March Madness. That's exactly what the thing is. These would be the actual current World Series. So basically, if you make the playoffs, you make it in, right? No. But you're more likely to make the playoffs if you do make it in for that one. I mean, for example, the Bobcats. They're not one of these teams to make it in. Just to point that out. They're in the playoffs if they win, off the context here. In the NBL others, we're still working on the other ones, which we'll update those later tonight or later this week, and then we'll have an insurance of no one happens next week when week 16 comes around. The biggest thing we know is the Panthers and the Dogs will play next week, and that will be the game of the week. That is all for Sports Hour. Thank you guys for watching. See you next week for week 16.